What it is, Brad Lee back again with another episode of Dropping Bombs today in the studio. Folks, as always, I got a real treat for you. Claire Deneau is in the house.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Folks, if you guys want to follow her, you can find her on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter at live.leaf.learn.
That's
Live,
right.
leaf, like a leaf of a tree.
That's
Learn.
Right.
The reason I have you here today, Claire, is because you are a passionate advocate for education reform.
Yes.
You were homeschooled, and now apparently you're very active in homeschooling.
Yep.
And the reason I said, man, I want to talk to you because I homeschool my kids, obviously. Mm-hmm. And I think the education system is cracked, like legitimately. The question is it done on purpose?
Ooh, that is a big question. And I did not know you homeschooled. So
yes, I do.
Thank you.
Well, again, I don't homeschool probably like you do because I think you actually do it. What I did is when COVID hit and they started saying they have to wear masks and they have to get shots. I said, well, that's not happening. So I had to take them out of school. Well, there was a teacher at that school that, you know, let's say saw things more like my family does. And so I said, how much do they pay you? And she told me, and I said, well, what if I give you a little raise and you just teach my two? She said, well, that would be a dream.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I'm here to make the dreams come true. So I just hired her.
That's amazing.
Yeah, well, that's been the last, I think, 2-3 years. And they're more advanced than their grades, number one. They're totally social. They're not shy. They get up on, because I do speaking events and things like that. They get up on stage in front of people. They're not afraid. There's nothing wrong with them. And they were homeschooled. You are more evidence. You didn't start reading till you were how old?
12 years old.
You couldn't read till you were 12.
Well, it's a little bit debated because in my mind, because there's perspectives, my parents' perspective, my mom was homeschooling us, and this was way back when there were no pods, no resources. Yeah. We lived on a farm.
When
basically.
Homeschooling wasn't even a thing, you were homeschooling.
Yeah, when it was a cult, essentially. When people thought of it as the weird kids who were just weirdos in the middle of nowhere doing something unusual.
Well, it probably would have been weird back in those days.
Yeah, it was pretty weird. There were no other homeschoolers within hours around. I think we drove an hour and a half to meet with the only other homeschool family we knew. So it was not popular like it is today. Not even a trendy thing like it is now. But so
it's not trendy. I think people are starting to wake up that these education systems are set up to cause more problems than good. And not only that, I mean, let's be honest, sometimes there's, families that just need to drop the kids off somewhere for the day.
Yep.
So in reality, it's almost like a babysitting service.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what it comes down to, and people don't want to acknowledge that right now. Unfortunately, it's not a place that's geared towards the holistic education of a child. It's geared towards America, which needs dual incomes and a place to put your children during the day for 8 hours while you work.
And I think that outweighs what the parents think. In other words, like, but I need a place to drop my kids off.
Yeah, but
I cannot homeschool.
Right.
I have to go to work.
Right.
So thank all the wonderful families that are able to homeschool, but I'm not. What do you tell those guys?
Well, I'm a single mom and I've homeschooled from day one. I've never had my son in daycare. So I hear this a lot.
Sure. That's a legitimate excuse. When I hear people, I put myself in their shoes and think, is that valid? I got to go to work. That's valid.
Yeah, it is valid. But if you make the education of your child a non-negotiable in your life and how you're going to raise them, then you can overcome any obstacle.
Well, that's true. But do I come home after work and just sit down and start schooling them? How would I do it? Because I still have to go to work.
Sure. It depends on what your schedule looked like. I had to go to work, and I had a nanny who came into my home, my environment, and took care of my son while I was at work. And she helped implement what I asked her to during the day. And I worked. And then I came home
What if you don't have a nanny, though?
Well, you're going to go and see what's going to work for you. You want to live near your family? Will your family help out? Do you have a pod, a local homeschool pod? Because there are also those type of homeschool groups as well, where communities have put together sort of, they call them pods where I'm from. They have little...
Where are you from?
Well, North Carolina now. I've been in Dallas for a long time, but they have groups that get together and educate. If we want to get together on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We'll have you drop off the kids at a house and start working on reading, writing, arithmetic, and you can create your own community around education. Now, that's a little harder to find, and you might have to be uncomfortable to do that. You might have to move, go to a different location, change your
Well, again,
living.
now you're basically saying you have to put your child's education above your needs.
Yeah, it's a revolutionary thought, I know, but
I'm just saying, that's a big ask.
it is. But if you're going to have children, you should be willing to put them above your own needs and create the environment that's best for them. I mean, it's really whether or not it's about you or the child. I was living in LA when I had my son, and LA became too expensive for me. So I chose to move to a place where it was more affordable, where I could raise him the way I wanted. Do I love the beaches in LA? Yes. Do I love the hiking in LA? Absolutely. The sun, the weather? Yes. Was it feasible for me at that time to do that in that location? No. So I made a tough decision based on what was best for my son. So, I mean, I think the reality is you're going to need to be uncomfortable sometimes. And your ability to manage and be uncomfortable and live with that, and knowing that you're making a good decision for your family, for your child, is really what people need to get okay with.
I'll give you a bomb on that one. I do think people need to, put their child's development. I don't like to say education, because to me, education makes me think of reading, writing, and arithmetic, which again, your basics, yes, you have to be able to read, you have to be able to communicate, you have to be able to understand language, etc. So there is, to some level, that. Then there's street smarts. I would rather my kids become extremely street smart than book smart.
Right. And how are they going to do that in traditional school system where you've pretty much set up a unrealistic environment? Because in the real world, where have we ever been stuck in a room with people our age looking and studying the same exact thing, being told what to do? This is not an environment that's going to develop children who understand what the real world needs. So it's not going to help them critically think or understand how to interact with others. It's going to set up this very, very superficial, almost fake environment of learning that isn't going to benefit them the minute they leave college if they're sent on that path. And that's a whole other topic that I can get on. But
well, let's start with K through 12. What's wrong with the education system?
Do you want people to be critical thinkers, creatives, or do you want them to follow rules?
Well, again, that's the question. Is it on purpose? Because if the conspiracy theorists say it's on purpose, they want you to follow rules.
Well, you got to think, if a leading basketball team, UNC in North Carolina is big, if that basketball team had a coach that repeatedly never brought the team anywhere, never won anything, would they still keep that coach? I'm not even a huge sports fan, but I know you're going to get fired if you're not bringing the team up or bring him through championships. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so if our education system has shown a year-over-year decline in literacy, for example, math, doesn't that say something? We should change something. Most logical people would think.
What should we change, though?
Well, this is all going to be a very long, difficult answer, because I think the system itself needs a massive overhaul. There is no one thing that can be changed within the education system.
So how do we start?
We start by not putting our children in an education system that's broken. And the more people who start to realize that's not okay, and that's not saying you need to homeschool in the traditional sense, but you can do what you're doing. You can look for forest schools. What
are forest schools?
Forest schools are just an alternative school, similar to what you're doing.
Why do they call it a forest school?
Because they believe that nature is somewhere that children need to be out, active, playing outdoors at young ages. So it's more for the younger children. But
well, that's true. I mean, when I grew up in school, we had recess. I almost quit school because of recess, because I don't play.
Oh, well, I broke my leg during recess in the 6 months I was in school.
Well, obviously back in school, we used to look forward to recess, but that's when all the nonsense happened. The kisses and the fights and the freaking bad things during recess.
You know what's crazy? I have no concept of recess really because I never went to school.
You've never been to school?
I have never.
See, you don't know what you missed, quite frankly, because, dude, there is something valuable about having a place where all your friends are every day. That was fun. School was fun because everyone was there. Now, was it education? No. So if you said, Brad, do you think I missed anything? I would say you missed a lot.
Okay.
But I also don't know how you were homeschooled. If I were homeschooling my children, I do know from homeschooling them that they like to be around other kids. So now we just have to make sure we put them in environments where there's other kids, where the school might have, provided that. But in your case, because you've never been to school?
I mean, I went and picked up my friends from high school.
Which means you didn't get to a prom.
I did go to prom. I went to prom. I went to homecoming. Prom? My local high school prom.
You just went?
If you're invited to a prom, you can go, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what school has the prom.
That's true.
I was invited to several proms.
Okay, so you got the prom experience.
Oh, yeah. So the kids at the high school actually thought of me as, and you'll understand this better than I will, as the international student. They were like, oh, you're the cool, mysterious international student who shows up, plays on our sports teams, goes to prom, goes to homecoming, and we never see you in this classroom.
You got to play on their sports teams?
Yeah, I was number one in U.S. rowing. New York State rowing. I was a rower. So thrilling.
Yeah, but see, I wouldn't have thought that. And when you say you've never been to school, I'm thinking you've never been to school, but you're saying you've never attended school.
I've never attended the classroom. I don't even know how many times I've walked into a school.
So where's your mom now?
In New York.
Did she teach you everything?
So my mom read, if you know John Holt, he was the father of unschooling. And she didn't do a lot of hands-on teaching. While she has a teaching background, she pretty much threw up her hands at raising me and my brother. And she did it in a very, I'm reading this book, I believe in what he says kind of way, not completely given up. But if you can imagine your 12-year-old daughter, what you think is not reading, can you imagine being a parent to that child? She was at a loss. So she did not necessarily do a lot of education. You need to do A, B, C, and D, like in a traditional sense. What she did was we had no television and we had a ton of books. We had more books than you could imagine. So
you had to read a lot.
When I got bored enough, I read everything. I went from not reading, and this is an interesting thing.
She didn't care that you were bored?
No. Boredom is where you really learn. That's where your imagination starts to take over, where you practice some of that thought process that you need to really develop sort of creative thinking later on. Boredom's like really what a lot of us need to sit with. We don't do that nowadays. I mean, we don't even do reflection anymore.
Our kids come to us and say, we're bored. Boom. You got to get up and entertain them.
You're bored. Get outside. Bye. Locking the doors. I mean, my son has a chicken. When he's bored, I'm like, go play with your chicken. And that's just
don't choke it.
Yeah, just don't annoy me with it and go play. But I mean, we don't do boredom anymore. We have thousands of toys. We have entertainment, televisions, everything in the world for kids to entertain themselves. And I really think boredom is kind of a lost art. I mean,
do you give him an iPad?
He uses an iPad for some specific things. We do OutSchool, which is an online program, and he meets for some classes there. And then on the weekend, I allow him time if he's completed X, Y, and Z tasks. It's very controlled. I know what he's watching. He only has certain programs that are downloaded that he can use. He does not have any social media. He can't text.
Do you think that's harmful to kids?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, studies have shown over and over again that social media is on so many levels, incredibly harmful for a developing brain. I don't know if you saw recently, but there was another person who wrote that there should be a Surgeon's General warning on social media because
they were talking about putting an age limit on it.
They should, by all means. Yeah. I think depression, anxiety, a lot of those things are derived almost directly from social media, or at least exacerbated.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah. Well, I mean, just imagine, like in school, if you would have went there, you would have realized there was a thing called popularity. And so if you weren't very popular, you could get bullied and ridiculed all day. And then school wasn't the same for you. You could have been the hot girl where everybody loved you and everybody wanted you. And then your school day was different than the let's say ugly girl. So, or guy. Same thing, you could have been the weakling, the nerd everybody picked on, or you could have been the freaking jock, football hero, or or, King Greaser. I don't know. King, there was all kinds of groups that formed, but it was a popularity contest.
Sure. Yeah. And I think that in itself, while fun, I mean, I was on the rowing team. I was actually team captain.
Yeah, but now it's international. It's global because of the internet. So it's still a popularity contest, but it's more exacerbated.
Right. And I think kids are deriving their sense of self not from core family values or, the setup they have in home, but they're deriving their sense of self from who they're around at school, which is where they spend 8 hours a day. And then a lot of children go home and they sit on social media. So who is their main influence? Who are they looking toward to develop that strong
social
sense
media.
of? And we know what social media is
Rappers.
like. Yeah. Snapchat. I don't even have that one.
Snapchat's not allowed in my house.
I would never allow that.
I mean, I let them get on Instagram and TikTok, which I probably shouldn't.
Well, you know what?
But not Snapchat. Why? Because Snapchat's used to send naked pictures and stupidity, and there's secrecy on that app. Like, listen, if I can't see what you're DMing, you're not DMing.
Exactly. And not only that, I don't know how it works because I don't download it because I think it is a very bad app. If I see an adult who has Snapchat, I'm even a little sus of what they're up to.
If they have Snapchat, they're probably doing something
exactly
sneaky.
Yeah, a little sneaky link they're up to or something.
By the way, folks, anybody's spouse, significant other has Snapchat, if I were you, I would tell them immediately delete the Snapchat. Unless it's you, and then you're like, Brad, shut up. Don't say nothing. No. Your spouse, your partner has Snapchat. Your kids have Snapchat. I would get rid of Snapchat.
Absolutely. That is by far. I know others are considered bad, but I know there are random strangers they talk with on there. I have seen teens talking to people. I asked, who is that? I don't know. Just some guy who thinks I'm pretty. I'm like, you're 15. Well,
in North Carolina, that's legal.
Is it? I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't think so. Maybe in
I know,
my
like
little
somewhere
time.
back in the South, like 14 is legal.
I have to look.
Nevada, 16.
Ugh.
Oregon, where I came from, 18. So that you have all these different of legal consent ages. I don't believe these lawmakers were using their heads at all.
No.
Like, how can you start having sex with them at 16, but they can't drink?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. There's no way in my household that will ever be accepted. I even have like internet controls just to make sure that we're protected from anything I don't want.
Well, they seem to always get around those at my house.
I'll tell you what to do. I've got IP blocked. Trust me, I have it so locked down.
Yeah, tell me what to do. Because again, I want to let my little girls have access to the internet, because I think to have zero, I think you're harming the kid. The kid needs to understand technology.
Absolutely.
So when people are like, don't give them an iPad, bullshit. Give them an iPad. Get them to understand technology. Because if they don't know technology and now they're an adult, look at some of these 70, 80-year-olds that can't even use a damn Zoom session correctly. And then when you send them you send them a Zoom invite, they're like, I got to get someone to help me figure this out. It's like, figure it out, like open it. Now, my 2-year-old knows how to operate an iPad.
Oh, yeah.
She'll open, close, turn down, turn up, lower the volume, mute. If you're talking to her and she's listening, she'll pause it. Like, she knows, and she's 2.
Yeah. Well,
but let's get back to the education system, because that's the big problem.
Yeah.
What do you believe is wrong with it, number one? Then I want you to tell me, do you believe it's intentional? Because when I look at some of the books that are in the libraries.
Oh.
Matter of fact, there was a guy that was thrown out of a city hall meeting or some sort of city planning meeting with the school board and all this.
A woman.
And he was, it was a guy. And he was reading from a book talking about, shit he shouldn't have been saying in this meeting. And, they're all offended, these board members. And they're like, stop talking, and everybody's like, what? And all he's saying is, how is it not appropriate for me to read the book that's in my 9-year-old's library?
Right.
How is it not appropriate for me to read in this setting a book that's in the library for that 9-year-old to read? And by the way, encouraged to read.
Yeah.
I don't understand that part. Like, who is in charge, and who do we need to vote out or stop allowing to be in charge? Like, do we have a bunch of freaking pedos? Do we have a bunch of people with an agenda running the school boards?
Well, I mean, if you think about this, I think if you can control the education of a generation, I mean, you've kind of won. If you can control the mindset starting at a young age, you're going to be able to direct where those people go further on.
I know, but like, dude, that is a sinister, long-term diabolical plan. You really think there's a big scheme behind it? You think some very wealthy families got together and said, okay, let's create the curriculum so people become, sheep and they just do what they're told, so we can feed them our pharmaceuticals and our drugs, and we can feed them all of our goods and services, and they're just mindless drones walking around buying all of our products and services as if there's one group of people that own everything.
I mean, I'm not saying that's completely ruled out, but I do believe if you want to have control, you control what's going into the minds of younger children. And
if you want to control the future, I would agree with that.
Yes, the future. The children are the future of America. So if we want to control that, if we're looking, I think it's highly politicized. And if I'm in the political party that wants to win, I'm going to make sure that I have a very forward-looking plan that's going to set up my stage 20, 30 years in advance to win. And it's going to continue winning because I've already seeded that idea 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And if my opponents don't feel that way and haven't had the foresight to do that, well, I just took 20 light years ahead of them, and I will be winning until that is broken. So who did it? There's a lot of discussion of whether or not this is a whole conspiracy brought on by the Rockefellers and those ideas. But what it is to me now is a political war ground, the school. And I don't see any huge advocates for children. I see a lot of advocates for what should be taught. They claim to be. You can't claim to be for children when we're teaching the type of books you just mentioned in school.
Well, see, this is my point. So and all parents agree. This is why I said, when they say, hey, you want this girl on the show? As soon as I read what you're passionate about, I'm like, I want to talk to her, because there's a lot of parents out there, especially entrepreneurial parents. They're building businesses. They can't bring their kids home and build a business.
Yeah.
It's just, again, that's a valid, hey, I ain't got time. I need some place to take my kids so I can go build a future for us. I agree with that. Like I would, and I did it myself when I was a kid, except for schools weren't, at least I wasn't even aware. Schools didn't seem like they are today. Today, I don't know if I grew up and started noticing, right. But when I had my little kids a long time ago, I put them in school, and school was great. You right. dropped them off, you picked them up, they had their friends, everything was great. They came home, they started learning math, they started talking on their own. Right. You're like, holy shit, you're a smart little fella. Well, you got to thank the teachers and the schools for that. At least I do. Right. But at some point, and it was right around COVID, mm-hmm. At some point, I started noticing, like, wait a minute, that's weird. Like, that's weird. And then I started looking at, like, what if the child were the customer? Why would they have the child show up so early when they're tired and right. cranky? Why would you feed them what you're feeding them? Why are those books in the thing? Why do you have transgender, what are they called? The men that cross-dress?
There's so many terms.
They're impersonators, female impersonators or whatever.
Yeah.
They're having drag queens. That's what I'm looking for. They're having drag queens come to the school and read books. Now, again, I am not against a drag queen. Like, I don't care. Do what you want to do. But why would you want drag queens to come to the school and read books to the children? I don't understand that part. Like, why and who? Because, dude, isn't there someone authorizing that person to come into a school?
But then on the flip side, why?
I know, but yes or no? There has to be. Someone has to authorize who's coming into these schools. You don't just get to go to a school and read to kids. They have you come in there. Okay, so who at the school, what part of the faculty is saying, yes, this is a good idea? What position has authorized this? And as soon as parents realize, and by the way, if that doesn't bother you, okay, no big deal. Guess what? To each his own. But something might bother you. Like, mm-hmm. Does nothing bother you? Because the books bother me. Yeah. Having a cross-dresser come read to my daughters, like, whatever. It's not going to make them a cross-dresser. So at the end of the day, I don't like it, but whatever. And by the way, I would question the school's faculty if I saw that, though. Why? Because what's it got to do with the child?
I think it doesn't. I think
no, they're trying to introduce that. Okay, well, dude, introduce it when they get older. Let them find it on their own. We don't need to insert it in a 9-year-old's life. We don't need to say, oh, by the way, you can be whatever you want to be. Do you feel like a boy? It's okay to be a boy. No, it's a girl. That's a girl right there. So you're telling the girl it's okay to be a boy? Why would you introduce that? If the girl felt like a boy and started acting like a boy and started chopping off her hair, should you ridicule the girl and tell her, no, you're a girl? No. See, that's too far the other way. If they identify it, but you're inserting it.
Right.
And you're asserting it. It's like, stop. Just like educate them on reading, writing, and arithmetic and send them home, please. Right. Teach them how credit affects their life. Teach them how to build relationships. Teach them the harm and toxicity in gossip and drama and childish behavior. Like, develop them to be contributing assets to society. And so in that world, you can't just, I mean, those are the ones that you want to be free thinkers, critical thinkers. Right. I forgot the words, but that's why you have to, make them that way.
Right. But I think when it comes down to it, we got to go and look back at who's funding the schools. They're the decision makers, where the money's coming from.
Well, you would think it was the taxes.
You would think.
Who is funding the schools?
I think this goes back to it's the political parties in charge, and
they fund the schools.
Well, they don't directly, but it's
state
going to be
budgets fund schools, don't they?
Yes, but depending on the states, they're going to decide the schools need to meet these standards. If they meet, No Child Left Behind, if they're going to meet certain standards, then they will get more funding. For instance, if a kid doesn't read at 100%, or if the class doesn't read at 100%, their funding's cut. So schools need to get the funding from the states. The states need to get funding from where?
If they don't have a kid, they don't have funding.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why you're saying, if you're a parent and you believe in what we're talking about here today, just go withdraw your child from school. Because if all the public schools had no kids, which, by the way, the kid is the customer.
Exactly.
But they're not catering to the customer. You know who's the real customer? Teachers. Teachers are the ones that schools cater to. Did you realize that? Like, when I asked the teacher, why do you start it I forget how early they were supposed to be there. And they just, and that this particular was a public school. They said, well, that's just when we're told to show up. That's when they've decided. Right. I'm like, I know, but studies show that that's not the ideal learning environment, stiff chairs, et cetera, et cetera. So if the kid was truly the customer, why wouldn't there be more comfortable chairs? Why wouldn't there be more,
The question is, where's the money going? I mean, if they're getting funding,
going to the teachers.
It's not going to the teachers. It's not going to the chairs. It's not going to the recess activities. So
where's it going? Where is it going?
I don't know. This is kind of a question.
See, I thought you would know. Don't you spend your life in this world?
I spend my life in this world, but there's very hazy outcomes or answers to all of this. It's kind of nothing's working, and we all sort of see that, but we keep following along this path, and nobody has solid answers as to why the school systems have declining scores, why teachers aren't being paid as much as they should be, and yet we keep putting the children in this school system.
And we keep allowing whoever's deciding these things to remain in control.
Right. And the thing about...
Because they're elected in, aren't they?
Yes, and the thing about who's allowing them...
We are.
Yeah, we are the ones who are essentially allowing people to be in control of this, but also... It's a very hard thing now to get your child out sometimes, and sometimes it's hard to make your own decisions for your child and be an advocate if they're already in the school system. So once they're in the public school system, if you want to hold them back a grade, or if you suggest that maybe they should stay out of school for a few hours because it would be better for their well-being, they won't let you as the parent make decisions for your child. So like you said, it's not in the best interest of the child. It's a system. It's a whole system that's been developed over, it could have been developed based on Rockefeller's idea to create factory workers, et cetera. And this has been developed over years to follow along this path to sort of feed into the college education system afterward to create workers. And it's not revenue. And it's not helping the individuals. And I think the more people realize it and pull out, I actually think eventually there'll be some sort of backlash towards the homeschooling community because schools will be losing that income. And I think that is going to happen as you see the trend. If you've seen the trend in homeschooling, it is shooting up.
Yeah, because people are waking up.
Oh, yeah. COVID made that happen. I'm convinced.
Yeah, it backfired on them.
Yeah.
But again, I mean, to me, I don't want to get into conspiracies only because you never know if you're right or if you're wrong. But I do know there are those books do exist in the libraries. I know that like there are certain agendas that they push. And again, mine eventually went to private school. Well, my newest batch, because I have 3 sets of kids. But my latest batch of children.
Yes.
That sounds so bad. But my youngest ones have always went to private school. Mm-hmm. And even the private schools were doing it.
Ooh, even the private schools. I have had that experience. I've seen.
Not all of them. But the one they were attending, they were. So there's some in Tennessee. We got a house in Tennessee, and there's some good schools in Tennessee from what I hear. And it's like, I almost want my kids to go to a normal school and go get the schooling and the experience that I got when I was a kid, like back in the good old days. And yes, you might get punched in the face if you're a little boy and you get in a fight with another little boy. But overall and in general, when I went to school, there was no metal detectors. Nobody was stabbed. There was nobody bringing guns. It wasn't anything. It was freaking good.
Yeah. And I think there are good schools. So I don't want to sit here and tell you that homeschooling is the only way. I think there are great schools out there, but you got to be absolutely vigilant and really, really advocate for your child in those schools and know what's going on. Because my experience with private schools, you pay what? In Dallas, it's like $60,000 a year for a great private school. Well, people pay that with the reassurance that their kids are going to get a great education, right? I mean, I'm paying X amount of dollars. They better come out.
You're supposed to believe that, hey, this is a private school, not as many kids, more focused attention, and they're going to be advanced than the publicly educated kids. And by the way, they are. Like when my daughter was in the 3rd grade, when they tested her, she was doing like 6th grade public school shit, and she was in 3rd grade, and she's doing 6th grade shit, 7th grade shit.
Right.
Well, that's because there was only 15 kids in the class, not 50.
Right. So I think you have to be aware of that, though. What type of private school is it? Because I know private schools that cost a lot of money, have great reputations. And I know also what's going on for the 10-year-olds in the school. I know that they're sitting on their iPhones sharing pornographic stuff amongst other kids. So,
that does happen too.
That happens all the time. I mean,
and not only that, like the worst behaviors of my kids come from other kids.
Exactly. I mean, that is something that you have to be absolutely vigilant about as well, because you need to know who their friends are. And if they're spending 8 hours a day with these people, you want to know who those people are around them. What is it, the 5 people around you?
Yeah, but you kind of do. When they're in school, you know who their friends are. They talk to them when they get home and they want sleepovers. You know who their friends are.
Do you know their parents?
Not always.
I mean, I know people who say they know their friends, and I hear because I'm kind of the fun, cool mom who does lots of adventures with kids. And I know their parent. I know these children. They'll tell me things. What happens at some of the sleepovers? What happens when they're out and about? And I wonder, do the parents really know what's going on? Or that child that they're hanging out with comes from a great family, good background, mom and dad seem like society members, etc. But I hear the stories of things that go on, and it is nothing I could imagine having my child around. I mean, we're talking horrible things.
So if there's people listening, they're like, I agree, but I'm stuck. What's your advice?
Well, it depends on what you're stuck on. Are you stuck on the idea?
Yeah, I'm stuck on the idea. I don't have time. Dropping them off is easy for me, but I am hearing what you're saying, and I am willing to consider some options if you got some better options than just, quit my job and move to frickin' Nebraska because my kid's education is so important.
Sure. I mean,
and by the way, is it really that important? Because again, I will argue that because I didn't get a killer education and I did just fine. So, I don't believe a child's education is so important. Why? Because I think life's going to teach them some shit. The question is, are they equipped to be a contributing member So they're appreciated by circles and groups and, society. Did you raise them to be intelligent, contributing members? That's what's important. I don't think the education part is so important. Right. If I knew someone that really didn't read as well as they might, or, in other words, someone that, was reading like this, believing, obviously there's going to be a problem, but someone doesn't know what, a hypothalamus gland is. Like, who cares?
Right. I mean, I think what you're saying is correct, but for someone who's concerned, I'd say the first thing, look at what's really being taught to your kid. Ask them to write you something. See what their writing looks like. Can they actually, have you seen handwriting of children nowadays?
Yeah.
I mean,
what about core?
The core competencies, reading, writing, and math?
Yeah. I saw the math and I said, dude, that is the dumbest shit I've ever seen. And again, this is when I start thinking, like, who's making these decisions? Because, like, who came along and said the way math is wrong and this is the new math? And someone said, yeah, let's adopt that. Let's stop with the old math that made perfect sense that we've used forever, and let's introduce this new way of doing math.
Because too many kids were failing the old way, so we need to create a new, easier method so that we can make sure less kids fail.
It wasn't easier.
Oh, the one that's 1 + 1 may or may not equal 2? Because that, to me, I heard that recently.
Core math, the way they come to the answer matters. Mm-hmm. Not that they get the answer.
Right.
To me, it's like if I looked at a problem and got it any damn way, if I'm right, well, that's what matters. But they're saying, no, you have to solve it like this. They want them to understand this long way of solving a problem.
So we eliminate critical thinking. We want you to think completely linearly. We want you to follow our exact steps to answer a problem. Do you know how to follow perfect steps? It's to memorize. It's not to actually understand a concept. To follow mathematical steps like that sets you up for failure because math builds upon itself. If you don't understand like the first steps in math and you don't really conceptually understand it and you're just doing the methodology versus understanding what you're supposed to be doing, you are going to eventually struggle in math. And I think that Common Core actually set people up to essentially struggle, but also set people up to learn in a very linear sort of strategic memorization manner versus critically thinking. It goes back to the idea of what kind of society are we creating? Who's creating this society? We're creating people who will just follow in lines, not color outside the box, just follow rules instead of going outside of that.
So if you could help everyone listening to this, how would you do it?
Well, I'd say look at what's being taught. And if you think that I wouldn't use the term education because I think you're right. It's not education. It's more if you want your child to be a contributing member of society, if you want your legacy, essentially your children to be set up for a good future, a successful future, you need to really step back and think, what are they being taught in school? And if you decide that their school, where they're going, is not setting them up for success, if they're failing or just barely getting by, and they're anxious, depressed, having all these things that we are seeing so prominent in our society now, in our young adult, adolescent society, then you take a hard look and say, okay, this is my legacy. My child is my legacy. And does this mean I need to make change? And if that needs to make change, then you really need to assess things. Because yes, not everybody's going to get up and move to Arkansas and make their life less expensive and easier, but there are options.
Can they DM you?
Yeah, absolutely. You can message me and I will sit there and look through any options. There are websites out there that'll help you look for schools, alternative schools, homeschools, forest schools, nature schools.
Well, I need your help right now.
Yeah.
Because the teacher that I hired away, she's, let's just say, retiring. So now I think as of last week, they don't have a teacher. So right now I'm considering them on summer break and I have them in summer camps.
Yeah.
But as soon as those summer camps are over and those kids go back to school, I was thinking, well, maybe I'll just put them back in school. Is that a bad idea? And if it is, then what are my alternatives now? Do I need to go into the school and snatch another teacher? Is there a teacher website that good people will homeschool them for me? Because I'm not going to be the one sitting at the table teaching them shit.
Sure, no.
And neither is my wife. I want a teacher.
Yeah. So if you want to first, yeah, I think it would be a bad idea, but depending on their age, I don't know how old your children
11
are.
and 9.
Okay, so 11 and 9-year-olds are fairly self-sufficient. So I would opt for look into some curriculums.
Like
and
online?
Then, yeah, I don't know if you know, but there are so many resources for curriculums out there that are fully baked in. And there are online curriculums where they can do it all online and have virtual. You can find teachers.
And that's accredited where schools don't say you're, not following the rules.
Absolutely. There are multiple ones too, and I can list them and I can share them, but there are tons of them. Nowadays, there are so many of these resources. If you want a teacher, then there are resources out there. There's virtual teachers. You can look at OutSchool. That's a place that has accredited virtual teachers.
OutSchool that you can hire just for your kids?
OutSchool.com. They have classes, and then you can join a class. It's like a Zoom, and then you do the class while they're teaching it through the day. In your area, though, that's going to be specific to where you're living, finding a teacher. And most teachers, there are a ton of great teachers out there that are handcuffed by the system. They simply can't teach the way they'd like to. The dream of growing up to be a school teacher isn't it anymore because they are teaching to tests, they're teaching to standards. And I think there are tons of teachers who would love the opportunity to teach your children or anybody's children on a one-on-one basis. I
almost want like a nanny / teacher.
Yeah.
One that comes over in the morning, doesn't leave till dinner, and all day long she's teaching them languages, Spanish, Mandarin, whatever, and all the reading, writing, and arithmetic. So if there's anybody listening to this that fits that, there'll be a diligent background check. But if you pass, I'm interested.
And a lot of your homeschool communities have a lot of those, your local homeschool communities have those resources at their fingertips, if not group classes too, where, we have a Spanish teacher on Thursdays. We can have your children join. I mean, it really is, when it comes to an in-person teacher, it's going to be location specific. And there isn't one website that dedicates, not like a care.com that can dedicate a homeschooling teacher for your family, but you can find them a lot online and be proactive. Go right into school and say, hey, I saw you were a great teacher. I want you to come teach in my home. If that's going to work for you, absolutely. I would poach teachers left and right when I find a good one.
Folks, go follow at live.leaf.learn if you're interested in learning more. What's making you dedicate your world to trying to get people to homeschool?
Well, I think I'm a product of it. I grew up homeschooled and I loved it. And I see people who didn't love it as much. And I think myself, my sister, my brother have all been successful, had very nice lives. We're well-adjusted.
We didn't even talk about it. She's co-founded a medical company?
Medical device company. I was one of the co-founders with some doctors. And it's finishing up clinical trials and it'll be in the US. So, and I wouldn't have had that opportunity if I wasn't taught things like how to be a self-starter. I sat down when I was 20 some odd years old. We're not gonna say how old I am now, but I was young 20 something year old with a doctor who was interested in starting a company. And I said, I'll be a part of it because I know the software you need if you cut me in. I mean, that's not taught to you in school. That was some little ballsy kid thinking she could get something, and
well, you couldn't read at 12 years old, but you went to college at 15.
Yeah.
So like from 12 to 15, your mom must have crammed some shit down your throat.
No, you learn when you're ready to learn. If anybody's ever been passionate about something, really passionate about something, you can learn that very fast. I think they say if you spend 15 minutes a day, you can become an expert. I mean, I decided that I was going to read, and I didn't go reading cat, hat, fat, boring books. I picked up serious books and just started reading.
What? Immanuel Kant?
No, the first books I remember reading were about horses.
Nietzsche?
No, I should have done that. No, I was all about sci-fi pretty much. I read like Ender's Game, a lot of Orson Scott Card. I was very big into that. But
that would almost make you
a nerd, maybe.
Yeah,
but I thought it was
Dungeons and Dragons and shit.
No, I never did that. I wasn't Dungeons and Dragons. I just
but you didn't read any like actual self-help, personal development, or human behavior books? Because if someone said, "What book should I have my kids read for success?" You know what I tell them? Human behavior.
Yeah.
Sales. Mm-hmm. Communication. Marketing. Yeah. Understanding of the dynamics of relationships. I mean, if the person can go out and build relationships, your kid's going to be fine. If you teach your kid to be open and abundant and positive and kind and capable of building and nurturing relationships, your kid will be fine.
Right. And I didn't read self-help books. I didn't read them until I was much older or any sort of...
Do you now?
I do now. But here's the thing. The one I did read was Dale Carnegie's book.
How to Win Friends, Influence People?
Yeah. I think my parents had it on a shelf. So
I do the opposite of that.
Yeah. You just lose friends and de-influence.
How to lose friends and, not get influence. Yeah.
No, I think homeschooling innately supports his entire book.
Yeah.
I mean, you are one of the things people say about me. I'm genuinely curious about everything. I grew up being interested in things. So no matter where I am, I have genuine interest in what you do, how you do, why you do it. And I'm not saying that because I'm trying to get something. I'm just curious. I learned how to tie flies and fishing lures because, well, one, I needed to, but two, like, it's kind of interesting once someone starts telling you about their craft and what they're passionate about. So as a kid who didn't learn all those sales tactics, what I did have was my parents exposed me to every social system, every social experience, circumstance, cultural experience you can imagine. So I was always talking to people constantly, and they always drilled into me, ask questions. It's like the art of asking questions, but I didn't know about it. They just said, you want to ask people questions. So I was just this very annoyingly loud, talkative, opinionated kid who'd ask everyone I met lots and lots of questions. And I grew up that way.
And coincidentally, that's how you build friends.
Yeah. And that's how you actually show genuine empathy, learn about them, care about them. But yeah, one of the biggest differences.
Did you teach that? Did you get taught that in homeschooling?
No, it was simply experiencing the world and having a genuine interest allows you to build friends. It's kind of innate.
Yeah, but they should teach kids that, because a lot of kids they go through life, they don't realize that.
Right.
They're in the little cliques and they're making fun of other people, and they don't realize, in 10 years, that dude that you're making fun of could be, Bill Gates.
Yeah. Well, they should. And if they're going to, and that's another thing, if in a traditional school system, the things that I would learn innately in homeschooling need to be taught. You need to teach these things. You need to teach about wealth management.
But if Zuckerberg's partners weren't at school, they never would have known Mark.
That's true. That's very true.
So there's a good case for school as well.
Well,
and it's, to me, relationships.
Yes.
Like if my kid says, "Dad, do you want me to go to college?" Yes, I do. Why? Not the education, the relationships, the experience. It's good for you. Now, the actual curriculum, but you don't need that shit, if you ask me, unless, of course, you need a degree that gets you a specific career that you're looking for.
Right.
You want to be a doctor and they require you to have this degree and that degree, well, you're going to school, son.
Absolutely.
But if you want to be successful, I don't think the curriculum at any college does that. Otherwise, everyone would be signing up for that freaking class.
Right. Well,
and how come everyone that graduates with a degree isn't successful? Because having a degree doesn't make you successful. So that's how you determine that. When people always ask me, should I go to school? I think yes, because of the network, because of the relationships, because of the parties, because of the fun, the experience. You might meet your wife there. You might meet future business partners while you're there. You might forge relationships that are worth unlimited amounts of money over a lifetime. And if you didn't go, you wouldn't have met them. So yes, for that reason. For education, shit. If you're going there just for education, you're wasting your time.
Well, I think I'm not against colleges. I agree with you.
That was from me.
That was very good.
That was a self-earned.
Definitely. No, I went to college and I enjoyed it. And I would tell anybody who's interested in making those relationships to do that. But also I have a theory. A lot of these people who are homeschooling are entrepreneurs. I mean, we have Grant Cardone, Patrick Bet-David, a lot of the entrepreneurs are homeschooling. So in a way...
That's because they can afford it, though. Don't use them. Use some other ones.
Like celebrities?
Well, again, celebrities can afford it. See, the big problem is people can't afford to homeschool in their minds.
In their minds.
And then when you say, well, Grant does it and PBD does it. Yeah, but they have, huge budgets. It's so easy to do if you're rich.
True. But
I stole the teacher. Like there's a million people out there going, well, I'd steal a teacher too. If I had an extra 60 grand, I could give to the teacher, but I don't. So what do? Well, you stay home. Nope, that's not an option. And then they stop listening and their kids remain in school. So like something that they could do would be, find some online resources and then just prioritize them a little bit and give them. And here's another thing. Our kids don't go to school 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
When you're homeschooling them, like it's only a couple of hours worth of shit.
Right.
So when you're believing that you need 8 hours a day to homeschool your kids, you don't. You need an hour or two of time to log in, set them down, be the parent, and let the curriculum do the teaching. Because there are systems and programs that you just set them in front of the computer and you're there for support. You're there to make sure they don't, lose focus.
Yeah.
Like you sit there with them for an hour or two. Yeah. And again, if you're like, well, dude, it's not that important to me. Well, then, that's a problem I can't help you solve.
Yeah. Well, here's an interesting stat for you. Did you know that over 57% of the homeschooling households make less than $50,000 a year?
No, I didn't know that.
That was 2023 reporting.
Did you know that 72% of statistics are made up on the spot?
But yes, I did know that. But that one wasn't. We can fact check it. But it was in 2023 census.
Well, again, I always go, yak. It's so easy to just say there was a study for that. Where was the study? Who funded the study?
That's always true. You got to know who's funding it.
It's all jack sauce. That's why anytime someone comes up with statistics, they're interesting, good to know, but I move past them very quickly.
But if I look at my homeschool groups, the co-ops I go to, it's not going to be, I won't see you probably at my local homeschool group. I won't see those people there. It's going to be just local families who've decided the system isn't for them. They don't like the values. They don't like what's being taught. Yeah. So although I think we were talking about relationship building, my theory was a lot of families are deciding to homeschool, and there will be relationships built in the homeschooling community
and
as
opportunity.
Well. And opportunity, because a lot of people are waking up with a similar mindset.
And they're going to need the pod. They're going to need the leader of the pod.
Yep.
Folks, this episode's giving you some ideas. Either get your kids a better education through homeschooling, or maybe you could even start some sort of homeschooling initiative. Yeah. If any of that's of interest, go follow Claire. Live, leaf, learn. Live.leaf.learn. Yes. Appreciate you coming in.
All right. Thank you.
And folks, as always, until next time, keep it real.